Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Hack the Mountains 3.0. Welcome back to another session of the HTM Qubits, where we conduct these regular sessions to strengthen your skills as developers and strengthen your skills as developers and strengthen. Today, we have a webinar presentation by Miss Vanshika Srivastava. Vanshika Srivastava is a tech and community evangelist. Her expertise happens to be in the building of and scaling of communities in SaaS, Web3, and cryptos. She's advocating open source and ambassadors for certain projects. She's plugged into developers, communities, and startup ecosystem. Now I can go over and over, but I will let her introduce. I will let
Hi
her
all.
you introduce.
Hi Krish.
Hello.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm actually very glad to be here. And it's very exciting to see what Hack the Mountains have been doing for so long. So definitely, glad to be here. And just to know slightly bit more about me. So I think Krish pretty much covered a lot about myself. But before we begin the session, I think there might be a lot of diverse people that I can say at least at an open source ecosystem. People from different backgrounds come in, and I've been always very inclusive about all of these people. So, slightly intro to my background. I am from a commerce background, and I broke in tech because of the passion that I had in it. So, open source was one of the very major reason why I am here, and I think I cannot just describe how much community means to me. uh, you can check out my Twitter. The username is already mentioned there. And what I mean to say is, like, you can always see me building in public, and that's something that I've always recommended other people to do as well. So if you're getting started with your journey today, definitely recommending you to build in public and share your journey. And apart from that, I've been working on startups, working around SaaS and other developer security tools. So that's pretty much what I am doing today. Would be definitely looking forward to connecting to a lot of folks here. But yes, that's pretty much about me and my mini journey that I had to share. I do have a blog about, how did I get in tech and stuff that we can share definitely later, so that you can go and have a bit more insights about my entire journey and space. So yeah, thank you. Over to you, Krish.
Yeah, that really enthusiastic me that you are from the commerce background and you're you're doing the developer stuff. That's a big motivation for us. To, so I am into this. I'm also a contributor in the Web3 space. I am currently contributing in the Hyperledger Fabric community. So that is also one thing. So, do you have a presentation right now? Would you like to
Yeah,
share your
yeah.
screen?
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, folks, let's do this. I've not created a very huge presentation because I don't believe in those kind of things where you just go about talking a lot of stuff. But yeah, I did some of the things, so maybe something that can be helpful to you. Okay, just let me know if it is visible. Cool, I think it is. So, as the topic says, it's about the open source ecosystem and how to get your journey started in it, right? So, I already briefed about what I am doing, but technically, the four major segment that I always touch upon is that I am a tech evangelist. I'm always building in public. That means that you'll always see me learning and doing and building stuff in public, whether it's in Web 2, Web 3, and open source ecosystem, and even SaaS. I'm also an open source advocate, which means I stand and I kind of you know evangelize about how open source ecosystem has been changing people's life, and how great it is. And definitely it is, definitely I just cannot elaborate on that point enough. And then also a development thought leader, have been I'm part of an advisory board of dev network on the dev evangelist board. So that's just slightly bit about me. So when we say what is open source, I think that's not a very new term, but I've tried simplifying open source into 5 different segments that I believe what it is, and how should we perceive it when we are from a community, or we are kind of looking at it from the point of project contribution. So of course it's free and available, which means that you do not really have to go about finding these applications and then paying for it. Although there are some certain commercialized open source that some of the services would be free for the people's use and people can contribute to it, but the product would be always readily available, which means anyone can just check it out and go through an entire demo of that particular open source project, even if it is commercialized. Now, a very major segment of open source, what it talks about is the contributions, and that is not just limited to code contribution. I've heard a lot of these things that, I'm just getting started in a particular tech stack, a particular language, and I don't think I can contribute in it. But I will definitely say that if you are beginning your journey in open source, start from a non-technical if you're not very confident with the code contribution, because open source is open to contributions, and that include both technical and non-technical aspect to it. Then the other thing is that if you want to get started in open source, and open source also kind of stands for me, it has always stood for contribution, collaboration, code, and the communication. We can also say community, right, instead of communication. But collaboration is a very important segment of open source. Why? Because you might see a lot of open source projects, they are kind of collaborating with some stated good companies and even the other open source project. That means that they're very much open to these kind of collaborations, and the people who kind of lead or who are part of these organizations, they also get to meet people in different ecosystem and contribute in a different style. So collaboration means it could be in a video sense, it could be in a podcast, it could be a blog even, right? But yeah, it's in a different way, and every open source project will have its own way of segmenting how collaboration is working out for them. Then when we say community driven, so open source focuses on the community in a lot very much sense. We might not know that thing, but it seems that it's like purely for the tech people, and that people like us, like let's say who are from the commerce background or science background, or if they do not have learned tech in a deep structured way, they cannot do it. But everything about open source is community driven, which means that no matter where you are coming from, whatever your background is, if you need any help, you reach out to the community and you ask them that you're facing this particular issue. And I always recommend people do their homework, which means do a proper research. Just don't go and step in the open source project because it's right there in front of you. You need to understand what that project is trying to do in the community, and then reach out to the right people, right set of people who talk about the project, who help you. You can always use a discussion option which is there on GitHub, and having more understanding about the project before you start contributing to it. So it's a very community driven thing, and the very important part is to understand that you are not here in order to gain something, but in order to give something back, even though you are learning in that process. And the last one would be the developer education. Of course, all the open source projects have this one thing definitely involved in there, which is the education part. And that happens through the developers, the developer advocates, the programs that they run where they will teach you that, if there's a certain project, let's say, I am building one developer security where we are trying to help people to understand developer security and DevSecOps. So we are going from DevOps to DevSecOps right now, and we're trying to educate people about it. So in open source ecosystem, when people are bringing their project up, they also educate about the technology that is behind it and the logic why they are doing it, because it's usually better for the people out there. Okay. So now, how to get started in open source? So the very important thing is finding the right community. I'm not very sure if you would be able to get the right project, but if you get the right community, you will definitely end up having the right project. Why is it so? Because if you, let's say, if you get in a good community, there would be a lot of people who would be contributing in other open source projects, and you can always ask them, what is the open source project that you would like to recommend me? And based on those recommendations, you can check out the projects. Of course, you can take your own research pathways where you just go about understanding your tech stack interest. Or let's say if you started off with Python, which is something I also did, you can always find projects in the Python ecosystem, which something Google offers. The GitHub offers. You can just filter it out and go through it. But still, if you want to go completely from a beginner-based point of view and try to find that right project for yourself, always go with the right community, and that right community will help you land the right project. Now, please ignore the spelling mistake that I had. I have made this PPT, I was thinking a lot about that, should I make one or not, but then I thought maybe I should, because the pointers will probably help you out. So if I made certain mistakes in there, please forgive me for that. But yeah, start off from the documentation. So as I was saying, it is okay to start from the non-technical aspect, and that is where the documentation part enters. So documentation is nothing but basically the entire README and some I would say installation and other instructions, which is very useful to the communities. Let's say if someone is setting up their open source projects and they would like to go about people reading the documentation, which is step by step how to start getting involved in the community. And there are some things that, let's say, you found that documentation can be re-enhanced, or maybe there are some things that can be added more, or there are certain resources that can be added. You can definitely contribute to that segment, reach out to the right set of people. And that's where's one thing I want to say. A lot of people start just reaching out to the maintainers. So always remember, most of these projects will have some senior contributors, which also might be the community managers, or they even might have their own Slack or Discord channel. Please go in there and try to have a conversation with them rather than just trying to reach out to the maintainers, because they are definitely very busy while they create the entire project with the other developers on the side. So they might not be able to answer your questions. So if you want to get your queries solved, do it in a proper pipeline, in a proper way. So always check out for the Slack or Discord communities, or certain places where you can have a conversation with them. And if you want to contribute in a certain other things, which could be even design, maybe helping out with hackathons and certain online or offline events, you can do even that too. And that is also a contribution towards the community that you can count. Now, understanding project and community is something that I already have covered. But what I mean to say is that every project and community will have their agendas. And understanding that agenda is very necessary, because if you do not understand that, then it will be very difficult for you to contribute in the long run. So please understand that and be inclusive and patient to the community. While you are trying to understand where you're trying to contribute in, and the right people, you're trying to find those people, right? There might be times then it's going to take for them to revert back to you, and it's okay if that happens. So you have to be very much open to being patient. And when I say inclusive, let's say some certain new people joining in the community and they ask some certain questions. So you might be a newcomer to a community for the time being, but after, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks, you might have started understanding more about the project. And if you're not understanding, then that there's definitely something that you have to work upon. But if you do, start being inclusive towards them and trying to help them out, because just like you, they have also began their journey in the project. So that is how the community grows, that you start learning and then you help other people to learn about them. So, okay, now things to keep in your mind. I don't really want to make it purely technical for all of you, because this is just an introduction, and that's why I'm trying to mention out the things that you can probably keep in your mind. So things to keep in mind when you begin this journey. So first of all, a lot of communities will have their structure of raising PR. Or let's say I'm going to give a solid example of Hacktoberfest. So people would, they open the PR for mistakes, or like for the issues that is not even an issue. It's like probably a spelling error, like just I've made here in the PPT. They'll just highlight those as an issue. That is something that can be, mentioned on the discussion, but that's not an actual PR. When you fix a bug, when you point out something from the code structure, or you're not able to install something, maybe that can be counted as a PR. But if you go about not understanding how to raise that thing and whom to notify, then you might have a slight delay on your end and your PR might not get much, which means that your contribution might not be accepted. So for the acceptance of that particular, your contribution, you have to follow certain code of conduct if there's a thing that is mentioned out by the project, or you can go about understanding the structure of the same thing. Now, don't have too much expectations in the beginning. Why do I say that? Because people tend to have this thing where they would be like, I submitted my PR or I raised this issue, but no one really accepted it, and you get demotivated in the end. I'll say, don't. The very important thing in your own open source journey is from not to start from big open source projects. Why? Because they will always have bigger issues to look at and bigger things that they would like to merge. When I say bigger thing, that means that a slightly more advanced level merge that they might see up to. So if you're starting off your journey and you're just going and uh, pointing out things in a project which is like big, it might be possible that it might not even get accepted, even if it is valid, because they are looking at bigger sort of things. So you can always try out from a small open source project which is in the working phase. Check out when it was last committed, when was the last commit that happened, and how the community is acting there. And maybe there you can expect that your PR might be the valid one, but do not think that it might get merged, because there might be a lot of things that can refrain you from doing that. So don't have expectations, because if you start having expectations, you might feel demotivated in the end. And we don't have to be demotivated in the open source ecosystem. If it gets merged, well and good. If it does not, it's okay. We move on to the different project or a different set of issues and we work upon that. So the idea is that you focus upon how much impact you can create on the community. So if it's not from the code segment, then from the non-code aspect, right? So that's something that I have followed personally. I've not really made a lot of code contributions in the very beginning of my journey. I started off from a non-code, like writing technical blog posts and understanding some certain technical functionalities around cloud native ecosystem, which was specifically in the YAML and the Docker structure. That's what I wrote. So yes. Now, apart from that, sharing your journey of contribution in public, that's a very, very, like a huge plus one for me. Why? Because what happens when you start putting down your journey of your contribution in the public is people will help you out. Let's say you were stuck in the between of building something or doing something or learning something, and when you share it out anywhere, I would usually recommend Twitter, but if not Twitter, then even LinkedIn. So if you put that out, that acts like a social proof, number one. Secondly, it helps you to get the right people in touch with you, and you can always leverage out whatever you are learning. In fact, you can say that you are trying to help the other people also get started. So when someone answers your question publicly, that's something that I always say in my community. But if you want to ask some question, just tag me in public. Don't come and ask me in DM. Why? Because I might help you today in DM, but there might be other people who can also get good set of information from this, and they might miss out on that, right? So always share your journey in public, because it's going to give you a lot of boost for what you're building. It's a right motivation actually. That is something that kept me going. From my personal experience, I never thought I will pursue content creation in the technical space and in the open source ecosystem. But when I was sharing my journey in public, what happened is that a lot of people started talking about few things that I was doing. And that made me feel that, okay, maybe I should do this even more often, because people are now getting, they're getting help and they're getting to learn new things. So that's why I kept on going. And then last but not the least, finding the right community and mentors. I can just not explain how important it is to find the right mentors in the tech community. And this is just for not open source. This is like throughout your journey of your learning, you'll always have to improvise and find new set of mentors, which is completely okay. uh, Mentors are not the people who are going to be your gurus forever throughout your life, because every phase of your life and if I talk about from the professional space, right, you will advance. You are learning today open source, maybe the next thing you will be learning is into web3 ecosystem, and you'll start learning other protocols. A lot of things would happen, and every phase will require you to have at least one or two mentors so that they can guide you that where you are leading. What are the mistakes that you have to avoid that they probably made? So today I have my mentors, and today even I am a mentor in that same space, so that I help other students, other people out in their journey, that what to do and what not to do. So having those right community and having those mentors within is a very important thing. Now, I think, yeah, these are some of my favorite open source projects. So over time, I think Medusa open source projects, I never contributed to it. But then when there was a product hunt launch for Medusa, I supported that. Kubernetes is definitely my favorite one. Why? Because I love the documentation. It was super easy for me to understand a lot of things. So what I did is like I started out from understanding Kubernetes documentation to figure out how an open source project really works. But then I contributed to a slightly more different project, which was dependent on Kubernetes, but not fully that one. Boxy HQ is in developer security, which focuses on DevSecOps, which is something that I'm working upon as well. So you can definitely check out Boxy HQ GitHub profile, and then you can join the Discord channel. Even I'm there. I would definitely love to help some of you people if you want to join. And then there's application. Even that is a very great open source project. So now the question arises, where do we begin? Now from all about we talking about, how to begin your journey and how to go about, finding the right set of people and the projects, how do we really begin our journey, right? So these are the five links you can say, or like the five resources where you can find some of the issues. So first time issues, first contribution, open source Friday, Python project scripts, and code triage. These five are my favorite ones. You can always find the beginner first issues. Even on GitHub, they have a certain tag of beginner first. So all these projects which have made some issues beginner friendly, they would always have those tags. So you can also sort these kind of projects from that kind of filter. Use GitHub in a proper way, and it will lead you to so many free resources. Trust me, for any kind of learning today in the space, specifically in technical space, there are a lot of content available, and just understanding which one to consume will help you to understand a lot of good uh, you know good complex topics. So explore GitHub as well, right? Figure out some of these first timer and beginner friendly are the tags that is there on GitHub, and then these five are the resources that you can access. Now, probably this question comes a lot to me, that how to choose an open source project. Checking the license is a very important thing, because a lot of open source projects might be unlicensed. So if you want to be specific about which project you're going, check out the license, check the last commit, the maintainers, and the community activity. Why? Because certain open source projects that even might have a license would not be functioning in the current times. They are out there because they were in open source. They are open source. They have built it, but then they are not operating. Like they're not updating and maintaining the codes anymore. So therefore, understanding that when was it last commit. So if it's like a week or 2 week before, even I think you can consider that project to be active. When you find the right open source project, make sure that you join the community right away and introduce yourself there. Connect with the right set of people. If the community has a developer, community manager, try to have word with them. Do your research and then go to them if you have a question to them. Okay. Look for the number of contributors. It really does not really does not really matters, but yeah, it's good to find the right set of contributors even. And if a project has a good set of contributors, then you can say that that project is working in a really fine way, because people who would stop contributing or something, there might be definitely a reason why they would have done that. So making sure that it has good number of contributors, I would say 200 would be also a good number of contributors. So that's a very important one. Then check the language and topic. So never go for an open source project for whom you do not understand the tech stack and the topic. Topic in the sense like what it is trying to really initiate in the community. So if you are today learning Python, then you go about finding Java project because it just looks cool. don't do that, because in the long run it's not going to help you out. It's a waste of time. So figure out your language, figure out your tech stack, and then go and choose a topic. And yeah, I think I mentioned about the last point. If you are going through a documentation, you feel there's some kind of technicalities you can add to it. You can find that gap and you can start from there. Understand how GitHub works. GitHub and Git is very different thing. Git is a version control, while GitHub is a place where you do all these things. So it's like an entire workspace for you. That's the easiest way I can explain. But understand the working of Git, and if you really want to see how the version control is working, probably you can create a demo project of your own, right? Upload a very simple script, if it is in Python or whatever, and then start checking out how you are forking the project, and then how you are making changes to it, and you're making sure that there is no issues with the merging process. So a few things that you can keep in mind. And one thing that I want to recommend. So when you are opening up a PR, always mention our reason. People just open it, but sometimes they do not write the reason, or like they don't explain why they found this particular thing as as an issue. So if you add those things, it's going to be very good. So I think like comments is a very very important thing in open source, because if you're putting certain code somewhere, even if your own project, right? If you have comments to it, it will become much easier for the people to understand. So always have the right words going out for all the contribution that you're making. So I think with the fact that it was just of an introduction to the open source ecosystem, uh, I would like to end the presentation part here and go more on an actual conversation. So yeah, if anyone wants me to share the presentation, just let me know. But I think that's it for the presentation point of view. Fish, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for this informative session. I think the viewers must have got an gist of this open source, and your language was so simple that even I got to from the scratch. I got that how to what is actually open source. I am actually a part of many open source communities, but like I still feel I don't have much knowledge about them. So we have a lot of questions over here.
Okay.
So I just saw the comment section. So first question is from Sairam. How can we how can how can we can benefit from the part of the communities?
Okay. So I actually made an entire, I gave a keynote talk for benefit of the communities, like how you can make the best out of the technical communities, right? But the most important ones happen to me is like doing networking. So of course, the world is now open to doing this, offline meetups, and everyone is having FOMO. People are doing meetups in Pune, Bangalore, different places. But the most important one is that let your work network for you, and that's going to happen in long run when you are part of a community, right? Even when you are sleeping, you have made, let's say you have made a contribution in the community, and you're not there, but people will always go through what you are trying to help out with, and that is going to act like a I would say proof in public, number one. Secondly, it will also help your profile to get better, and the feeling that you get is definitely a good one. But then uh, the benefit of that is always going to be the people you meet and the networking that happens when you are part of these communities.
Yeah. So how can I earn by contributing in the open source communities?
Okay.
Like I
So
also have this question where
yeah, I thought there
you
would be
don't
at
know
least
how
one
to.
question about
Yeah.
GSOC and things like that. So first, number one, understand GSOC and programs like Evangelist and all, they're supporting open source, and they pay you for being part of that project and contributing to that project, but you're also working more of a like a part-time person. So that's why they pay you. But it's not necessary that every open source project is going to pay you. Why? Because the commercialized open source, like app, right? Even there is story block. So the what happens is a lot of open source projects will end up becoming their own organizations, and they have their own funding. So they pay their people, whosoever is joining as a community manager, developer person, whatever, right? But when you are contributing in open source, it is not necessary that they will pay you. What you can expect is probably getting very good people in your network, right? Make a personal brand around your name if you're contributing in open source, and that can help you probably in the future to earn, because when you have a personal brand, you get to have a lot of collaborations, and you can probably charge for them if you want to. I don't usually do, and that Hack the Mountains always know that. I have not charged for any of the collaboration I've done, because I don't personally believe in that idea of earning from that aspect. But yeah, wherever necessary, if you feel that you can probably get some money, and it's more of an organizational thing you're doing, maybe then you can say. But don't expect open source to pay you. It is not about getting paid in open source. It's about contributing to the community in the first place. And money is something that can be a byproduct of it if the project is funded, or if they allow you, or if the people sponsor your profile.
Yeah, I think my motivation was to the communities are very helpful. They just answer your basic doubts also. So
Yeah.
moving on
No,
to next
more
question. Okay.
most important thing is that when you are part of a community, and specifically in open source, if you help out people, you will get recognized for that in public. And I think recognition is almost equivalent to the money. Why? Because you're putting time in it. Either you make money out of it, or either you make something good out of it, right? If you're creating those amazing connections within the community, and you feel that there's a more of a sign energy between you two people, or two of the groups in there, then why not, right? So I think that is a better approach to look at it, that when you're contributing, you'll always end up finding something very good there, and you never know how open source can help you. For me, it is like I was contributing in open source ecosystem, and that led me to my first ever internship in a SaaS ecosystem, and that was also in the open source field, but we were more of a platform folks, and that helped me to get my first internship. So I would just say these two, both of the things that I was doing was like world apart, but just because I was contributing in community, it really helped me to add one value point that I can help community, and I can make people understand about certain open source projects. So last one.
Okay. So next question is, what is DevRel?
Okay, lot of question about DevRel.
Yeah.
Okay, so DevRel really stands for Developer Relations. A lot of people might know already, but a DevRel responsibilities may change from project to project or company to company. Okay, but most of the times it's around enabling community, then having the developer education part and developer experience part as well. So we focus on the cross-functional teams, which is the product, engineering, and the community. So all the three teams that usually a company or an organization might have, DevRel works across these three cross-functional teams and probably reports to the CEO and CTO. In my case, it's the same thing, but for others, it might be slightly different. If the company is too big, they will have their own DevRel leads to report to, and the DevRel lead will have direct connects to the CEO and CTOs. And the idea is that they work upon the product availability and how better they can make it for the customers. But in this case, when there's a DevRel, they are not the customer; they are more of a community people that they are trying to focus upon. Yeah.
Yeah, this question is my when I started open source, my all question was this also: can we open source in the AI or the ML field? This
Yeah.
question is like, you can you specifically go for open source in a particular field, like this question.
Okay. So I have personally not really contributed to an AI/ML project, but I do know that you can definitely contribute into open source in AI/ML field. What you would have to do is you would have to pick the project with that AI/ML, I would say the technical functionality. Maybe if you are in Python, then you can use that. I have in for me AI/ML has worked out for me in Python, so that's how I know. But if you are using some other projects and some other languages, then you can check out those, and you can definitely do that. It's not specific to just one certain language or something like that. AIML also has an open source project.
So, like we can find communities to AIML, right? Also.
Yeah, you can. So the best way to do is like find the project on GitHub, okay, and then they will always have a added Discord to it or maybe a Slack to it, so you can join those and you can start contributing from within.
Okay. So, like the next question is everyone's question, like how to start for the open source community, how to start contributing to the open source community.
Okay, I answered that already, but still, how would you
Yeah.
start the contribution is by either you go by identifying a community, okay, enable your network, please build a profile probably on Twitter or LinkedIn, check out some projects that is out there, connect with people, right? Take their recommendation if you want to, and if you do not want to go with the recommendation part, which is something that did not happen in my case. So people ask me what was my roadmap and how did I choose my roadmap. I always say I explored like anything in my beginning phase, which was probably last year. I literally start back in the month of March, and I went to Twitter with the fact that I thought I just ask people this question that how did they make their entry to the technical space and everything, and then I realized that I'm a different individual. So that leaves me with this thing that whatever I am doing today, if I would have followed their path, I would not have been here. So everyone will have their own different roadmap. Your approach is going to be completely different. So for me, it was like I started off with joining certain communities and then understanding certain projects. You can do the same thing. You can probably start off from joining Discord communities. There are a lot of communities. So even inside the Discord, you have this functionality of searching the communities. If you go about open source or something, you will end up finding a lot of these. And you must have definitely heard about uh, projects like Versal and Host. I mentioned about Medusa. They are very good projects that you can join and probably figure out if that is a good community and a good project that you might like, and then see what are the contributions you can make. If you feel you do not have technical contributions specifically mentioned within the community, always reach out to the community manager person that is there and ask them if you can make a certain contribution. You can probably write a blog post that you use that project, right? So maybe you can start off with that also. It's completely okay. But understand this thing that there's going to be no certain roadmap to it. The only way to approach is either you go from a project aspect or maybe you can go from a recommendation, and you can either join your own communities that you might like. So yeah.
So the next question is why company would choose my project over the other?
I'm not really getting the question here, but I think
Like
you're
why
asking
should you
this.
go for the open source and not the like what everyone's doing actually? Why
I
why
may
should you go for the open source, right?
Okay, okay, and not go for uh, big companies. I'll say
Okay,
like that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So see, it is a personal choice. I will not criticize any organization here because everyone is trying to create their own set of things and they have their own set of target audience, right? When we say open source, it means that there is a trust that is being created over time when you are building that project. Let's say Google, the code base is not open to us, right? It's a closed project. I mean, there might be certain functionalities to it which is open, but again, so you do not know about how the Facebook is working, you do not know how WhatsApp is working. And but when we say open source projects, what it is trying to do is like create trust between the people. And if you really feel that you want to go for a product which is in the community space, and you want to do something directly with the community people out there, you should probably check out open source. And the best part about open source ecosystem is the remote thing. So if you're getting in an open source organization, let's say as a developer, as a community manager, or even a software engineer, you have this capacity of having some good flexibilities, which is the remote work culture is like top priority for me. with the fact that I'm trying to contribute into multiple spaces. And talking about the full-fledged organizations, like a huge organization, they have already created the impact they had to. So now, when you become the part of the team, you are into a learning and an experience phase. You have to showcase those skills. That if somebody is leaving that position, you are coming and filling that position. You're not creating something very huge because the impact is already created. So I think it's all about that thing. I personally feel that when I am in a space like open source, I can create more impact because people want to learn continuously, and there is a lot of knowledge gaining happening, a lot of knowledge sharing which is happening. While in big organizations, it's not like that. They have a static technology that they would be using for multiple years, and it's going to take time when they bring new functionality. So that's
Yeah,
my
it
answer to
must
that.
also give some internal satisfaction that you are helping new developers out there who
Definitely,
are
that's
keen to contribute.
definitely.
Yeah, so the next question is, which are the good open source projects in market right now?
Okay, I recommended four of them. I found these really good. So there's application, there is Boxy HQ, then there is Kubernetes if you want to try out DevOps, if you want to try out DevSecOps, Boxy HQ, application, and Medusa.js. Medusa is a very, very amazing project. Why? Because it's considered to be an Shopify, but made an open source. So it's a very different concept. So you can check out these four. And apart from that, there are also ton of them. There's nhost, which is there. I can't recall their names. There are so many, but you can check out Versal also. But these four are like the beginners, sort of a beginner friendly, you can say.
Okay. What is version control system?
Oh my god, version control system. So let's say uh, when you are building a project, it's right on your computer, right? I just don't know if you're learning BTech or not, but if you are, so please learn about Git and Git. I was about to say Git book. I'm so sorry, GitHub. Why? Because a lot of engineering colleges and even CS colleges they skip that part, but it's a very important thing. If you are going to get in a journey of software development or even a DevRel, right? Version control system is a very important thing because it helps you to track down the changes that is happening. And when I say changes, that means from adding things to code base to removing something from the code base and then deploying it on a server. So if you're building a project right now on your computer, how would you like other people to have an access to it? And you cannot share like a link to it because it's not a Google Drive or something. So what you do is you upload your project on GitHub. You create repositories and you upload your project there. I'm trying to keep it very simple. And then Git is the language. Git are the commands, set of commands where you would be using for adding the code and then deploying it to the server and making it, visible to everyone. So you can make a project private also, even when you have it on GitHub. But yeah, public one is why you use GitHub usually.
Like, yeah, when I entered this developer space, the developers referred me GitHub as developer's best friend, and I somewhat
Yeah,
agree to.
Stack Overflow and GitHub like go to. I think it is not about just code. GitHub is not just about code. It's also about particularly about resources. Also, you'll find so many people, building their own repositories of contributions of resources. So there's like a whole repository full of open source things also. So you can check out those also Web3 resources as well. So
Like, yeah, I had this personal question where the open source communities are moving from GitHub to the GitLab, because GitHub is like we refer the GitHub as like we copy and paste the code. So the open source communities, what they are doing is they are moving to GitLab. Can you give a gist about the GitLab? I seriously have no idea about the GitLab as
so
such.
like you want me to like make you
Yeah.
understand how is okay. I think in the simplest way I would say GitLab already has that continuous integration and the continuous deliveries, which is like the CI/CD pipeline. That's what you call. So GitLab offers you that thing. It's more of a community addition. While GitHub, you'll have to implement it over the application. So the DevOps goes from a different segment. So GitLab will offer you more Linux shell and all these things completely there.
So yeah, basically it has all the features of the GitHub, and it
Yeah,
offers additional features as well.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. But CI/CD pipeline makes it very better for the people to use. So you don't want to spend more time on that part, right? So they are shifting to GitLab for that purpose.
Yeah. So the next question is, could you talk about your journey? Because yeah, I also feel your journey is inspiring because you're from the commerce background and I'm from BTech and I'm still struggling in the developers area.
So you're from the engineering background, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what happened is basically I liked computer science, from a very young age. I think teenage maybe. So maybe I was 14 or 15, and that's when I started coding. I will not call HTML as a coding language because there would be definitely a bar in the comment section. But post that, I was just like exploring the high level languages and just jumped into Python and started, writing Hello World and stuff, and then enjoyed it. So it was more of a passion thing until my 10th grade. I really wanted to pursue things, but then you have to choose your streams in India, and I had to make a choice whether I should go with the normal conventional path of doing engineering or whether I can go with commerce. Now, why commerce? So people used to think that I am going for commerce because I can just get away with the mathematics part, but which is not true because I never stopped coding. And coding will definitely have some of the arithmetic logic things that you can say. So for me, it was like commerce had this business management thing that I wanted to study. So it held me. So business management was more of a skill, while computer science was more of a passion to me. So that's why I went with commerce because I felt that in long run, every business will have IT. Apparently, it will have an IT. And I did not know that something like COVID would come. So like I did my 12th grade in 2020, and I could not even give two of my examinations. But then my assumption of thinking that everything is going to be IT driven was completely right. And I think risking this thing of not going for an engineering background and then going from a commerce background was also very much correct. So I pursued commerce plus computers as my plus two, and I am still not passed out from my college. I'm pursuing my BBA degree, but in information technology, which is a course offered in Symbiosis, India, and that's like a hybrid course of both the tech and the management. So tech management is a very very growing career. If you want to get in even in fintech or something like crypto, Web3 also. Tech management is like a huge branch, and you can do so much things out there. You can manage product, you can manage project, you can become a devrel, you can do community management. So that commerce thing that I studied, the business management things I studied, really helped me to have some ideas of have some case studies on management aspect. While IT is a more of a thing which you can practice, you will always have a slightly limited case study because you know that this is how the code is going to work. If you use this particular technology, this is how it's going to work out. The functionality will be the same. But when it comes to the management part, not every company is going to have a success in that way. So now when I'm working in a startup, I understand how much important it was for me to understand the management aspect as well as understanding how the tech is working. So I can understand my own product in a deep way, and I can also think how a consumer or a user will be perceiving it. So that makes my entire developer experience quite better. So I'm glad I chose commerce. I never regret it, and it was always a chosen choice and not something that I had to do it because of my any kind of my condition.
Yeah. So you can develop from the commerce perspective also.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's somewhat good, really good. So the next question is, what are the requirements for the open source software?
Okay. I what are the requirements of open source software? You need to make your if you are building open source software, then you have to make it probably licensed one, right? You need to get a good license, you need to have a good documentation, I'm not really sure if that's a question, by the way, Shwangi, if you're asking though, but if that's a requirement that you're trying to put out, then documentation is one thing. Third thing, try to set up some community roles within the project as well. So that who is going to look after the code base, who's going to look after the documentation, you have things slightly cleared up. And maybe you can have some, weekly calls with the community as well. I think that's going to help.
Yeah, so I think we are done with all the questions. But yeah, there is a very like huge shout out to Vanshika. She's doing great in comedies. Like, yeah, appreciation.
Thank you so much, Omkar.
So thanking you for this wonderful session. Yeah. So uh, uh, thanking you for this session.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here and talk about my open source journey and share a few things around the same. And looking forward to the hack the mountains. Definitely, you guys are doing amazing job. All the best to each one of you, and keep contributing. Start your journey in the open source, and if there's something I can help with, please tag me in public so that I can answer the question. And thank you so much again for having me.